Hey yo, what up guys? This is Kuroki. This is just gonna be a guide for my pure single target, and I'm also going to end up doing at least saying what the variation is for if you want to squeeze in some AoE damage for cases like say Tala during ad phase while still doing heavy boss damage, and then also showing what's the name of it, the ad rotation. But how can I put this? Just to keep this relatively speaking quick, you have the hand socket, which is going to be max damage or improved stealth. I prefer improved stealth instead of most cases because you don't want to get knocked out of stealth, especially since that's where I currently keep my weapon buff. Not going to get into arguments, but mathematically speaking or whatever, over a long period of time, it is better for you to run these three artifacts than any other setup for single target damage. Keep in mind, for single target, purely single target, not trying to do single target with add damage, not trying to do what's the name of it, add damage or whatever for fucking smoke bombs. Just if you care about purely single target, this is your highest. I was like, this is your best damage output. Just these three artifacts. The AI's extra precision is not worth losing the cog of Mageddon. This is your best setup for if you want to be the best by yourself. Now, if you only run content when you have somebody else that has a cog, yes, you can run sparring AI, but if that person is never offline, you're about to get pushed in. Now, with that being said, or whatever, moving into the rest of the mods, this is supposed to be Blast Adapter. This is just left over from my controller, what's the name of it? My controller armory from SM. Head socket, critical battle display, relentless precision, breakout regeneration because a berserker is useless, core strength, and then this is supposed to be restorative taser pull instead of fan. I just haven't switched it out from whenever I was hard light for a day, just testing out some things. I actually found out that hard light's light claw actually hit as hard as tornado pull, so that was actually interesting. But just to show my prick, 26471, and then what is it? If you see somebody or whatever, you can get higher than this. It's like 26.5, 26.6, I think, with the OP head, something along those lines. But if you see somebody with a higher prick than 26.6, it's because they're running the AI, which means their parses are going to be, I don't want to say trash, but they're probably going to be at least 2K lower than mine. My parses normally average between 30 to 34 with the current setup that I have, and then whenever I put on EMP, if I was to, assuming I had a controller that was able to handle that, I would go up between 34, I would go up between 34, 35 up to 39,000 for a 10-second parse. That's the, I guess you could say, the swing range that EMP ends up adding to the loadout. It actually makes like a huge difference, especially because it seems, I don't even know why. I'm assuming it might just be the crit rate on fucking EMP, but it's fucking crazy how high it can get sometimes. But so essentially the loadout is phase dodge, taser pull, suppressor turret, tornado pull, robot sidekick, and stealth. This is the pure DPS spec. Robot sidekick is there for passive damage. Stealth is going to be there to add in extra clips that I'll mention later. Tornado pull is your hardest hitting single target move with a very high power efficiency because it's only 100. Hits harder than taser pull and hits roughly around the same damage as paralyzing dart, which is one reason why I don't use paralyzing dart as a standard, is just because it's fucking wasted power. It's the same as EMP. Like it does more damage and it's good for AoE, but in terms of boss damage efficiency, especially if you're running with PUG controllers, way better to just run tornado pull. Especially since tornado pull has the dovetail animation that's actually useful for stealth, and if I remember correctly, tornado pull also restores more power. I mean, not restores more power, restores more supercharged than paralyzing dart. At least it should from the animation time. Should, don't quote me on that. But suppressor turret is jump canceled in order to get rid of the tornado pull animation, so that's just going to be very, very basic. Phase dodge, your tap range clipping for those that, if you're not super speed, then you can't have phase dodge, so I'm sorry, but yeah, you just end up doing a tap range, and then that's also going to be another animation cancel. Now, in terms of, what's the name of it, your rotation, you're going to be doing your flurry, and as a side note, while I was on my mind, flurry has 5 ticks. You do not want to be jump canceling flurry like early because you're only going to get like 2 hit counts. So it's like, say it's at, well, actually I'll just wait for it to go away. I'm gonna wait for it to go away. If you're jump canceling, that's 2 ticks. That was 3 ticks. Like, you're going to eventually end up getting to the point to where like almost half of your damage is just tap ranges. Those tap ranges are hitting for 2K, Meanwhile, the actual weapon mastery combos hit for 5k. You want those 5ks, you want as many of those 5ks as you can, which means that you do not want to jump cancel this early, because you're just jump canceling just to go back into a 2k tap range. That's not what you want. And so what you want to do is you want to actually jump cancel toward the end of the dovetail of the flurry, and I felt there we go. You want to jump cancel toward the end of the flurry to make sure that you end up getting at least 3 to 4 of the, what's the name of it, of the 5k ticks. Ideally, or whatever, it's 4 ticks of it, or whatever, that'll end up showing if you do it perfectly, because you'll end up with a 5 hit counter, 1 from the tap and then 4 from the flurry. If you want to practice this, just go up to the sparring target, do 10 straight flurries, try to make sure that you're not hitting the dovetail, but then making sure that your hit counter is somewhere between 40 to 50. If you can land 40, you're probably better than over half of the fucking pre-DPSs inside of pug runs who are butchering their flurries. But ideally, you want to be shooting for 45 to 50 on a consistent basis, preferably 47 to 50. You can reach, I was like, if you can reach that area on a somewhat consistent basis, then you're good, or whatever, you're set for competitive DPSing. Now, with that being said, in terms of, what's the name of it? In terms of the actual rotation outside of stealth, it's just going to be straight up animation canceling, just basic, just clipping the might base move at the end of the flurry in order to basically add an extra flurry tick, but it's a might tick instead. This is just supplemental, and what that does is that adds more consistency to your parcels. Like for me, I go from 28 to 32 up to around 30 to 34 whenever I add in both of these animations. Whenever I add in the animation cancel of tasing pool and I add in the animation cancel of tornado, it ends up increasing the general range of where my parses end up landing. And so with that, or whatever, with that, there is a sacrifice though, that I don't have my weapon buff inside of my loadout, which is bad in certain cases if I can't use stealth or whatever. Obviously, if like inside of SM I had to go through and change it because I couldn't use stealth at all, but in most cases I can normally get away with running stealth inside of, I can normally end up get away with running my weapon buff inside of stealth whenever I have improved stealth on. This is because you're going to want to guarantee that you get off your stealth combo anyways, gadgets, so being able to guarantee that I can get off my weapon buff is also just an added extra benefit. But inside of stealth, you use tornado pull because tornado pull is a dovetail move, and I said before, it fucking hits hard or whatever, but it's a dovetail. If you use paralyzing dart here, you're not going to be able to do the suppressor turret clip afterward. So it's tornado pull, battle display, suppressor turret, and taser pull. Now the thing is, if you use cuff them into surprise attack, the thing about that is, how can I put this? You can't clip anything, so I can't hit cuff them and then go into a turret and then go into turret or go into battle display. I have to jump cancel it beforehand. And surprise attack also can't be clipped. You can't hit surprise attack and then hit Neo and then it ends up going off. You can't hit surprise attack and then your soda or your trinket or whatever, it doesn't work. You can't clip it or whatever, and that becomes a small nuisance. And so I prefer doing these just because if I do tornado pull, battle display, suppressor turret, taser, this taser I can go through and I can actually clip with several things. So say if I'm going through and doing this, what's the name of it? This is just an example of one of the clips that I do whenever I'm just like going through and I'm just parsing around. I'll go through and I'll be doing my clips. I'll be going through and doing my loadout, my rotation, blah 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 blah. I'll just go through and I'll just clip taser pull with a soda and I can go right back into doing, what's the name of it, my combos. You can't do that soda clip if you don't have taser pull at the end of it or whatever. You can't do that. And another thing you can't do is you can't clip in Neo and your buff trinket or whatever. That's another thing that you can't do. So I'm gonna go through and show this on the what's the name of it, I'm on the next set. I'm just gonna wait a good little bit just to make sure that everything is actually off of cooldown before I attempt to do this. But this is another clip that you can't do if you don't have what's the name of it, if you have cuff and surprise attack. Because the thing is, stealth will actually kick you out or whatever. Stealth, whenever it kicks you out, it actually ends the taser pull animation, but it will also end the animation of wherever else you're doing. So I can do tornado pull, Neo venom boost, battle display, turret, into taser pull, into my trinket or whatever, and having the kick out of stealth will end up can't clipping those animations and ending them early, which ends up helping significantly. As another side note, if you're using supply drop, do supply drop phase dodge and then tap range into taser pull into the clip. That's also a little bit more complicated. It's probably going to require some fucking muscle memory, but at the same time, that's technically, I guess you could say, your ideal way to start that off. And then also, how can I put this? Even though you say, or whatever, let's say you parse 30K as gadgets on single target, if you, or whatever, out of that 30K, around 3,000 of that is going to be pet damage between the Grim and the Robot Sidekick. So that means your weapon wise, you're really parsing somewhere around 27K. Just want to see what's sold really quick. Get something sold for 3 mil ish. Okay. What's the name of it? How can I put this? You're really parsing for around 27K, which means that 1 second of your animation time inside of your regular rotation is worth 27,000 damage. So if you were to stop doing your animations or whatever, if you were to stop your rotation and hit the man bat trinket or hit an orbital or whatever, you would end up losing or whatever and then going back to it. So let's just say, I don't know, say how can I put this? Say I just went through and I did this and then I just stopped this in order to say cast the orbital at this point right here. I just lost 27,000. I just lost 27,000 damage, but then I gained the damage from the orbital strike. Now the thing is, instead of, how can I put this? Instead of losing 27,000 damage, what you can actually do is you can use your orbital and you can actually use your trinket and replace a burst move. So say whenever I'm about to go into stealth or whatever, I normally hit taser pull right before it or whatever. So instead of hitting taser pull, I can actually end up hitting my orbital, or I can end up hitting my, what's the name of it, on my shadow man bat. And that's going to end up being a better trade-off, because instead of losing, what's the name of it, instead of losing 27,000 damage, now I'm only losing whatever this is hitting for, or whatever this is hitting for. So I'm only losing 7,000 damage, 7,000, 8,000 damage, as opposed to 27,000, because I'm just replacing a different animation as opposed to losing time period in terms of losing time on my rotation. So I'd be going through and then I would just go through and just clip it like that. And all I did was just replace tornado pull inside of the fucking rotation. And so that minimizes how much of a loss that you end up having. And then it said beforehand, another thing you can do if you really want to maximize it is you can go through and do something like that if you have the bottled city soda, because the bottled city soda will give you a 1% precision increase. It's not that much, but especially if you don't need it for power, it's just something extra to clip in. And in case that was too quick, that was taser pull, bottled city soda into stealth, do the triple clip, taser into the buff trinket, and then you basically have everything on you. If you wanted to do an entire combo, then it would end up looking like, let me just relog really quick. Alright, so that was an idea of it. It's phase dodge, it's supply drop, phase dodge, tap range, shadow man bat, bottle city trinket into the stealth clip that I ended up showing, and then the taser pull is clipped with your trinket. 6 seconds later, whenever your venom wrist is done, that's whenever I would probably go through and actually hit an orbital. That would be my theorized maximum damage start in terms of clipping in all of my trinkets and getting them off of cooldown at the very beginning at the same time instead of wasting animation time. But it is a very difficult clip in order to go through and try to do. But that's essentially that. And actually, after thinking about it, there is one other thing that I would like to say though, for single target. I forgot to mention the alternatives, the alternative options. So one thing that you can do if you want to do AoE damage is you can replace tornado pull with sticky bomb, and then inside of stealth you can replace taser with, what's the name of it, with paralyzing dart. So you would be going through and you would be doing it like this if you wanted to just squeeze in a little bit of extra AoE damage or whatever on the ad phases while still maintaining heavy single target. If you wanted to go full AoE, then obviously taser pull would be changed to something else. That'd probably be like vortex cannon or EMP, something along those lines. You'd be changing things depending on whether or not you want it to be melee or ranged. But you can run the same, what's the name of it? You can still run the exact same rotation. Just make sure that inside of stealth you still keep the tornado pool here, because there's not an AoE move with dovetail, I think, besides cryofoam, but I think cryofoam may not do enough damage in order to make up for tornado pool. And as a side note, this is technically meant for single target anyway, so probably wouldn't want to run that anyway. But yeah, technically you can do both of these or whatever, cover them in surprise attack or single target, so they're not going to help you in AoE situations. So I mean, ideally, assuming you're melee, I might end up doing something like that into either have, well, yeah, paralyzing dart should do more damage than what sticky is, so I'll probably be running something like this. I probably be, or whatever, assuming I had the power to, I'd be running something like this, and then it'd be turret clip into that, and then I'd be doing sticky bomb, phase dodge into turret jump cancel, blah blah blah, if I wanted to have a more full AoE setup. But the damage is obviously going, I was like, the power consumption of this loadout is going to be fucking crazy as fuck. That's going to be the main thing or whatever, because it's going to do good AoE damage, good consistent AoE damage, but it's going to be a fucking problem or whatever in terms of power consumption, because EMP is not going to be cheap, paralyzing dart is not going to be fucking cheap, and sticky is still technically a 200. It's going to run through a lot of power, but it's going to do a lot of AoE damage at the same time. Most times I just prefer going straight up on fucking boss damage, because that's what my job is whenever I get brought inside the race, is just to burn the boss. I don't get brought in for ad burn. I leave the ad burn to the elite DPS. That's pretty much all that they're good for anyway, so but yeah. Moving on to the smoke bomb armory that I normally end up using. This is just very, how can I put this? This is standard, assuming I'm using, what's the name of it? Assuming I'm using Neo or whatever. If I'm not using the supercharge and say I want to save all of it for the boss, then I would normally have stealth into either stealth into EMP or stealth into dart or stealth into something or whatever. I'll have stealth into whatever instead of Neo, but as a base it's EMP with a weapon buff or whatever. And then instead of robot sidekick, it depends on what content you're in. If you're, or whatever, depending on whether or not you can preload your pet. Your turret is going to end up doing more damage than what your robot sidekick is, but your robot sidekick can be clipped in. I can't hit EMP turret and then clip my weapon buff and then my turret stays out. You actually have to sit there and actually call it out for a second. Or whatever, robot sidekick, you can go back and you can respawn. So depending on what boss you're doing or what set of ads you're doing and how often it's going to end up dying, whether or not you're able to preload or are people just starting up immediately, like, it depends on whether or not you end up running turret or if you end up running robot sidekick. But essentially, or whatever, that's just what's the name of it, a judgment call. Then you would have EMP with your weapon buff, and then you're going to have whirling dervish and then vortex trap. And whirling dervish, the first one, you're going to end up canceling it doing a tap melee. Vortex trap, you're going to cancel it doing a jump. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use that to cancel the dovetail at the end of the smoke bomb. So at the smoke bomb, you're stuck inside of that animation for a second before you can go into another one. So what you're going to do is you're going to clip that. You're going to clip as soon as the smoke bomb actually hits. You're going to clip that with this in order to get the damage, and whenever you tap square in order to cancel it, well, that was a whole square, sorry. Whenever you do the tap square in order to cancel it, you're going to do that into the next smoke bomb. So it's going to just flow right into the next one. Right as it hits, you're going to go right into the next one afterward, and you don't have to miss, you don't have to use that little mini dovetail. And the same thing is going to happen with vortex trap, except for you're going to do a jump and then go into it. And so you're going to end up alternating both of these in order to keep, what's the name of it, in order to actually, I guess you could say, to keep getting rid of the fucking dovetail of that move, in terms of whenever you're doing your smoke bomb, to increase the frequency with which you do it. Now, let me just go through some of the turret. Side note, we have the Gremon, which is the reason why we are able to use EMP, because otherwise you probably want to use another move that set up the PI, but you already have the PI from the Grim. So with that being said, let me go through and actually just show this entire rotation, so to speak, in terms of how it parses base, normally speaking. 55,000 damage. $55,000 damage again. No, I ran out of power. Next parse is technically going to be butchered, but at least I might be able to get another 2 10-second parses. That was a 58. So, yeah, seems to be right as I remember. Like, roughly speaking, I was landing between 55 to 60,000 DPS whenever I was doing this. But, I was just like, I was like, what's that phrase? That's neither here nor there, or whatever. And I ran out of power. Oh well. But yeah, I would just like, that was a low end 46k. I probably missed a smoke bomb there by accident. Probably something small, but roughly speaking, that's the area that you're looking at. If you have stealth on, I think it's technically maybe a little bit higher, maybe if I was using stealth, but sometimes I like using Neo on the ads, and technically this was just a, I guess you could say a redone version of how I was doing it as a controller. Instead of EMP, I was actually using battle display and the robot sidekick, because every so often inside of poke tanks or whatever, my pet would end up dying, so I would just clip this in and then I would go through and just do it this way instead. So therefore I would start the power down, which was boosting my smoke bombs as well as the other, as well as the other DPS's smoke bomb as well. So you would want to go through and do it like this. But this is the, I guess you could say, the general thing. And I still landed, what is that, like 47.7. Still really fucking high DPS inside a controller stance, because keep in mind, I'm on a 10% damage debuff because of the controller stance. But if I had the this alone is technically gonna make up whatever the damage loss that I would technically end up having is technically made up just by this on the other DPS. So I'm perfectly fine with that, along with giving power to the group for the tank to be able to do whatever rotation they needed to and save their soda for emergency situations. But that's technically this setup, and I can't really think of anything else or whatever. Same principles applies beforehand. If I wanted to use my Shadow Man bat, I would end up doing smoke bomb and then clipping it with my weapon buff instead of EMP, just going through and replacing it with a animation of a power instead of breaking the actual rotation. But that's pretty much it. If I wanted to go through and cast everything else, I'd probably go through and do something along the lines of that. I would hit my orbitals, supply drop my buff trinket into Neo, and then if I wanted to, I'd go through and I'd throw in my bottled city soda as an extra clip if I wanted to. But it's pretty much all I can think of off the top of my head for fucking smoke bomb in terms of loadout / rotation-ish. Everything else is technically just the same. See, this one I actually have blast adapter on just because I didn't actually need power. On the ads, I didn't care about restoring my power on a consistent basis because I wasn't doing heavy debuffs. So, but that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and with that, I'll be ending this video.